Humans were the first spacefaring species to colonize Erissus III, and the planet's population had remained overwhelmingly human ever since. Any non-humans here nowadays were mostly business travelers or politicians, and they usually stayed in and around the planet's major city centers. And of course, there was Erissus III's Gillith governor, but no one saw much of it, as it usually remained sequestered high up in its floating palace at the edge of space. So before this moment, aliens were something Aithiawi had only seen on vidcast, and Aithiawi's father didn't talk about his off-planet trips in too much detail, let alone talk about any aliens. Neither did anyone else she knew, so she really didn't even have second-hand knowledge about what they were really like. The alien in front of her just stood there on its two huge legs, watching the papers fall, saying nothing. Its two trunk-like arms dangled in an attitude of defeat. Maybe it was shocked like she was. Aithiawi couldn't stop staring. A head, a trunk, two arms, and two legs. The dark young girl wasn't sure if two arms and two legs was usually the case with real aliens or not, but its physical similarity put her somewhat at ease. She slowly looked it up and down, figured it to be about 3 meters tall. Then, in spite of her awe, the young girl giggled a bit because the alien's elongated ovular head reminded her of a really old-school type football, with the same kind of pebbly, bumpy skin and everything, but dark green. The alien's 4 human-like eyes fell in a line down the middle of its face, with the 2 center eyes about double the size of the upper and lower ones. Its 2 large nostrils straddled its eyeline like broad, wet sinkholes, and, well, Aithiawi couldn't see anything on the alien's head that looked like an ear. Distracted as she was by the orange-striped yellow crest on its crown, it looked like an old, discolored tiara from a beauty pageant. Or an ugly pageant, Aithiawi thought with a grimace. Smaller, similar crests decorated the back of the alien's head, straddling its center line all the way down to the base of its skull, where the smallest crest could barely be seen. A mechanical mask with a number of small blinking lights, 2 buttons on the side, and a round speaker in its middle covered the alien's face below its eyes. Its thick neck spread out to almost take in its 2 huge shoulders, and the alien's massive chest fluttered a bit under its white linen, gold-trimmed V-neck tunic. Its flowing pants matched its shirt, and its white leather sandals matched the shape of its huge 4-toed feet.
"Forgive me, young lady,"
the alien said, its voice translated and strangely modulated through its mask. It shook its hands in a way that somehow communicated resignation, and bent down to begin picking up its scattered documents, placing them in a folder now lying on the stair between them.
"It seems that I was not looking in the direction that I was moving."
Aithiawi flinched at the sound of the alien's voice, but said nothing herself, stunned by the fact that the alien just spoke to her.
"I trust that I did not harm you in any way,"
the alien continued. It stopped collecting its papers and looked at her with its 4 vertically stacked, smiling eyes. The sudden focused attention pulled Aithiawi out of her shock. She shook her head slightly. No, I'm fine," she managed as she watched the alien's every move.
"Good."
It looked down and returned to picking up the rest of its forms, humming an alien tune. Aithiawi rose to her feet and just stood there, riveted by the other's strangeness. Her arms hung idly by her sides, an echo of how the alien stood only moments before. Nearing the end of its task, the alien paused.
"Oh,"
it said.
"This particular item is not mine."
It picked up a business card and held it up to get a better look at it.
"You must have dropped it,"
the alien concluded, and handed the card to Aithiawi.
"Please, accept it back with my apologies."
The dark young girl took the card mechanically, looked at it without seeing, and put the card in her back pocket. The alien favored her with its 4 smiling eyes again, picked up its folder now stuffed with all its papers, and ambled up the stairs to the entrance of the police station. Aithiawi's eyes absorbed its every movement. She didn't even blink until the giant figure ducked through the open entryway and disappeared.
"A real-life fucking alien,"
she whispered to herself, and full of excitement, she skipped down the stairs to her waiting limousine. On her way home, Aithiawi got in touch with all her friends on the limousine's audio-only S-Link to let them know that she survived. They were all greatly relieved, especially Yondon, who answered his link sobbing and ended it laughing and cursing with joy and astonishment. Nearing her family's estate, long after nightfall, Ayathiawi saw the lights of the hastily constructed media circus around the gated entrance to her home and got a sinking feeling in her gut. It was a slow news week, and Yondon had warned her that her fall into Fire Canyon was the hot topic for today's broadcasts all over Orissus 3. Her driver took it all in stride and calmly eased the car through the crush of reporters mobbing the vehicle in an attempt to find out the identity of the passenger. Was it the girl's father come back from a business trip cut short? He couldn't be reached by any news outlet. Maybe the doomed girl's mother had gotten in touch with him. Stopped at the front gate, Ayathiawi called her mother from the car, who, not surprisingly, answered immediately upon seeing her daughter's still image appear on the incoming caller ID. Ayathiawi was the cause of all this public attention after all, and her mother was desperate to show the world how blessed the young girl was to have such a loving parent. So the call between mother and daughter lasted only as long as it took Ayathiawi's mother to realize her daughter was just outside. Then, with appropriately dramatic flair, Ayathiawi's mother ran the half-kilometer from the family's mansion to the front gate in her bathrobe. Passing through the gate's pedestrian entrance, with the car still stopped outside, the young girl's mother rushed to the vehicle's side door and yanked it open. Ayathiawi was pulled roughly out of her seat and into the protective embrace of her obviously concerned mother's arms. The touching image was transmitted around the globe. Ayathiawi rolled her eyes at her mother's concern. Following a confusing barrage of reporters' questions, which Ayathiawi's mother promised to answer tomorrow after my daughter is rested and found to be free of harm, the chartered car was released. By the time Ayathiawi and her strangely attentive mother reached the family's main house, Orissus 3's news networks were already calling the 13-year-old the Miracle Girl. Sitting her down in the family room, while servants rushed to ready a meal for the Miracle Girl, Ayathiawi's mother demanded to hear every detail of her daughter's perilous day. About an hour passed before Ayathiawi finished her story to her mother's satisfaction, and the girl finally got to go to bed, which was all she really wanted at this point, to get in bed and fall unconscious with a nice, mellow high. Thankfully, she suffered no lecture about responsibility or common sense or about the follies of youth that night. Her mother simply stated that she was glad Ayathiawi wasn't hurt. Then her mother promptly got on the S-Link to magnify her story and bask in the focused attention of her friends. Ayathiawi felt dirty, filthy. She went up to her room on the 4th floor, shed her clothes, popped some pills, and took a quick shower. Floating in bed minutes later, she reflected on her unbelievable day. Flying over the cliffs of Fire Canyon, bright red lava, figures in metal suits, the backs of strange heads in cars, and the large green alien flashed through her mind. Exhaustion quickly took her. Darkness, sleep, bliss. The next few days passed by in a blur of bright camera lights, professional makeup artists, interviews by affected reporters, and grandstanding by Ayathiawi's doting, gloating mother. And just when she didn't think she could take any more, Ayathiawi looked out from her bedroom window one morning to find the small army of reporters and their broadcast trucks, their catering vans, and their travel trailers all gone. She sat down at her desk with a loud sigh, glad to be rid of them. Then, out of vain curiosity, she called up the latest newscast on her wall screen and laughed. She was old news. On the other side of Belendu, a farmer's barn and his favorite dog had been vandalized during the night. Volunteer investigators were flying in from all over. The governor was outraged. It was a slow news week. Ayathiawi considered calling her friends to plan some sort of outing and moved to activate her S-Link. She paused when she spotted a couple of business cards on the corner of her desk. The maid must have fished them out of her pants and placed them there the morning after she got home. She picked them up. 2 business cards. She remembered the one the cop in New Lodell gave her. She put it down. The other card was a mystery. Glossy black on the front and back, on it was printed a simple pastel blue graphic of a 2-headed leg-arret, a powerful symbol of good luck. Weird. She turned the card a bit and saw in matte black an S-Link address under the graphic. That was kind of cool, but she didn't remember the alien. This was the card the alien handed her on the stairs of the police station. Maybe it was just lying on the stairs and the alien picked it up while collecting its papers and mistakenly thought the card was hers. Oh well. She tossed it in the trash basket at the side of her desk. Aethiawi's father called later that day. He was weeks from coming home, being in the middle of a difficult contract negotiation, and was finally irritated enough by the large volume of calls coming from Erissus 3 that he had to find out what was going on. After getting the full story from Aethiawi's mother, her father's annoyance ignited into a frustrated anger at the absurdity of it all. He demanded that his wife put her on the line. "Hey, Papa," Aethiawi purred with as much innocence as she could muster as she entered the conference room and stepped into full view of the Go family S-Link. "Don't you hey Papa me, young lady. What's all this nonsense I'm hearing about you falling into Fire Canyon?" "Wait," Aethiawi began. "It's not as bad as it—" Her father cut her off. The fate of his newest contract negotiation was in doubt because of this interruption, and he had no desire to listen to Aethiawi's excuses for her poor behavior. "Not bad? Not bad?" His voice rose a few octaves as his anger boiled over. "I'll tell you what's bad." She backed away from the S-Link a couple of steps. "You had your mother worried to death, and I had to preempt an incredibly promising business negotiation today because of your short-sighted, irresponsible, and inconsiderate behavior." Her father's voice was a vibrating squeak of rage. Aethiawi opened her mouth to respond, but her father interrupted her again. "I don't want to hear any more words out of you, little Miss Daredevil. You're grounded." "But Papa," Aethiawi begged. Having spent the bulk of his anger, her father quickly thought out the terms of his daughter's punishment. He took a breath and then proceeded in a more businesslike manner. "You are not to leave the estate for a week." Aethiawi's face dropped. A week? Being grounded was like being sentenced to a slow, torturous death. Her father continued. "The drivers will be instructed to ignore any transportation requests you have for the duration of that time." Aethiawi had effectively stopped listening after processing the word grounded. After processing a whole week of being grounded, she could only hear her own anguished thoughts. Her father went on. "You will take your studies and your meals in your room. And just to make sure you don't sneak out to hire a car, and to prevent you from wasting your time and my money on frivolous transnet purchases, I'm freezing all of your monetary accounts for the week, starting now." His eyes momentarily lost focus as he cyberpulsed his daughter's new restrictions to the family's activity manager. Even worse than being grounded, the sting of the monetary freeze pulled an immediate plea for mercy from Aethiawi's lips. "That's not fair!" she screamed. "It was an accident!" Nevertheless, this time, Aethiawi cut her father off. "I hate you!" she wailed. Then she ran out of the conference room, up 3 flights of stairs, through 2 hallways, and burst into her bedroom to soak the down pillows of her microgravity bed in tears.